And how did they come to recognize you and say, this is someone that we want to bring to the United States?
Dave, I still ask that question myself.
Well, I appreciate the humility of that, but there must be a reason. In this episode, you'll get to know Ayse Birsel, the design Evangelista, and you'll hear the story of how she applied the principles of industrial design to crafting a beautiful and rich life. I'm Dave Crenshaw, and this is my Success Project. Welcome back, friends, to the Dave Crenshaw Success Project. This is the show. It's for adults, but I am teaching my children how to be successful through the life stories of others. You just get to come along for the ride. And in case it's your first time here, I'm a best-selling author. I speak around the world to Fortune 500 companies, and I've taught millions of people how to be successful through my online courses. And I'm also a father of 3. And because my children mean the world to me, I got excited about the idea of creating a show where I could interview people that would help my children succeed. But because I thought you'd enjoy learning along with my family, I'm inviting you along for the ride. I speak to some of the most successful people I've met in my life's journey. Some of my guests you've likely heard of, maybe in the news or social media. Others have flown under the radar, so to speak. Or like my guest today, you haven't been realizing it, but you've been using things that she's created, and you use them every day. I try to interview people who have balanced success and happiness in their own unique way, because I don't want to teach just a one way of being successful. I believe there are infinite pathways that you and I can take to get there. But I want to interview people who have balanced success in multiple areas of their lives, not just financial or career. In fact, I believe there are 6 facets of success, and I try to pull these out of my guests as we talk about things. The first is relationships, health, profession, money, cause, as in a charitable cause, and fun. You got to have fun with all that success that you're having. And if you can have multifaceted success in these 6 areas, you'll have success that shines like a diamond. And that's the kind of success that I'd like to help my family and help you find. That's what the Success Project is all about. Now, I'm about to introduce my guest, but I want to ask you to do one thing. As you're listening to this, I would like you to look for actions you can take. Because if you do something about what you hear Ayse share today, it will make her story a part of who you are. It'll stick with you. I'll do some things to help you recognize some possible actions you can take, but I want you to look for them as well. Now, my guest joining me from New York today is truly remarkable. Ayse Birsel is one of Fast Company's most creative people, and she's on the Thinkers 50 radar list of management thinkers most likely to shape the future of organizations. She's the author of Design the Long Life You Love, and she lectures on that to corporations around the world. Ayse is the co-founder of Birsel & Sec, an award-winning design and innovation studio, and she consults Colgate-Palmolive, Herman Miller, GE, IKEA, Toyota, and many, many others. You have probably used a product that she has helped design. And her work, this is amazing, her work can be found in the permanent collection of the Museum of Modern Art. Ayse, thank you so much for being here today.
Dave, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, yeah, I'm so excited to have you. As I was reading your story and all the things that you've accomplished in your career, my goodness. So I always like to start the beginning by asking you a fun question, which is, what did you want to be when you grew up? And I'm not talking about when you were a small child. What I'm talking about is when you were in high school or you're in that age in your teens and you're starting to form ideas about what you want to do with your career. What was your initial thought?
My initial thought was I wanted to be an architect.
Okay. So you were able to pursue pretty much what you wanted to do from the beginning.
Pretty much. But I switched from architecture to industrial design just in the nick of time.
Okay. So first of all, where did that interest come from that? Because that's not an interest that I think the average person has.
If we start at the beginning, I come from a family of lawyers. And so my first thought was, I'll become a lawyer, like my dad, my aunts, my uncles. And then I realized that I love to draw. And so thought, okay, if I'm a lawyer, I'm not going to get to draw. So change plans.
Yeah, I don't think that happens much in the courtroom or creating legal documents, right?
Exactly. So then I wanted to be an artist, quickly realized that's too alone, too lonely.
So you like interacting with other people?
Yeah, I felt like if I'm an artist, who do I answer to? Just myself. Felt too self-centered in a way. And it's a great question. I can't remember why I went from art to architecture, but I do remember how I went from architecture to industrial design.
Okay. So talk to me about that transition. What led to that?
I was finishing high school and a family friend came to tea and asked me, what do you want to be? And I said, architecture. And he said, have you thought about industrial design? And I had never heard those two words together before. And then using a teacup, in Turkey, we drink tea all the time. He explained industrial design to me and he said, you see how the edge of the cup is curved so that it can fit our lips better. It has a handle so you can hold it in your hands without burning yourself. That is industrial design, that there is someone who designs and thinks about objects, and it's very human scaled. So I fell in love with that.
That's fascinating. I love when I interview people and I hear the story about how a casual conversation can change the whole course of their life. And it sounds like this was one of those moments for you.
Dave, I often think very similarly, but it's more a person, can change your life. And I can actually kind of map out every person that helped me get to where I've gotten. And it's just those interactions,
And when you say map out, are you referring to an actual map or is it just something that's in your mind?
Oh, actually, I map out my life. I just did one recently. I map out what I know. And then from that, I imagine the future. So I literally draw it out. And it starts at birth and kind of tung, tung, tung.
Oh my gosh, that's fascinating. So what tool or what process do you use to create a map like that?
I'm so glad you're expanding on that because it's fascinating. So I use a pen and a paper. I can also use my iPad and stylus. And you kind of start by, it literally is like a map, like a road map. So I can do a little circle for my birth. And then I do a line to move it forward. And then next event, I wanted to take art lessons, for example, at 5 years old. I do a little circle and then next to it, just annotated. And then you go up and down. First, I go up the paper. And then when I've run out of space, I come down and then I go up. And then there comes to a point where I'm like, in this moment where you and I are at, and let's say there's a circle that says Ayse and Dave interview. And then there's still space on the paper where I'm like, okay, well, what's next? And that's where I start imagining, based on everything I know, what's to follow.
Is that a process that you share in your book, Design the Long Life You Love?
My next book. I think I'm going to...
Okay. It sounds amazing.
Thank you. You're not the first person to say it's amazing. I want to know how to do this. That's why I'm thinking this might be another book,
Yeah. And I don't know if you're comfortable with it or not, but if you'd be willing to share just a shot of one of these, a photo or a scan of one of those that we could share with our audience, I think that would be wonderful. I think they'd be inspired by that.
I would love to. And what's interesting is that just recently doing this made me realize that this is what design is, right? When you're a designer, often you take a pen and a piece of paper, so that connection between your brain and your hand, and you take out what you know and put it on paper. And based on what you know, you imagine the future. And you can do that with your life. You can do that with a chair. You can do that with a service, a strategy. But that's really, in a way, the definition of what design is. And in the process, as you imagine the future, you're trying to solve problems and get to a better future.
I love that so much. And it's part of what I love about this show and what it's become is it's about people sharing their unique pathways to finding success. And so some people will listen to this and they'll go, that doesn't work for me. And others will hear it and go, my goodness, that's exactly the way that I want to do it. And they wouldn't have considered it if they hadn't heard you share this first. So I really appreciate you sharing that. So where are you going to university at this point? Is it in Turkey?
It was in Turkey. So once I realized industrial design is my thing, there was a new school that had just started in Turkey at the Middle East Technical University in Ankara. And that's where I went to do my undergraduate.
And is there another moment that's similar to this conversation that you had that you replay in your mind of when you were in college that you feel shaped your pathway in the future?
The moment that comes to your mind, actually not during university, but because my next step was to come to New York. And I've often thought, that was kind of intuitive. Like I wanted to come to New York. I didn't know why, but I needed to do it. So there is a piece of that where there is a strong inner desire to come to New York.
And you came to New York on a Fulbright scholarship, correct?
I did.
So for those who are not familiar, what is that? Because I know that that's quite an honor to receive that. What is that and how did you come to receive that?
The Fulbright Scholarship is one of the best scholarships in the world. And it was started by Mr. Fulbright, I think in the 50s after the Second World War, to create knowledge exchanges between countries so that Americans who are on a Fulbright scholarship will go to other countries and learn in other countries. And then non-Americans will come to the States and learn in the States. And that cultural exchange is something that contributes to world peace. So that's the idea of the Fulbright Scholarship.
Oh, it's such a beautiful thing that he created. And how did they come to recognize you and say, this is someone that we want to bring to the United States?
Dave, I still ask that question myself.
Well, I appreciate the humility of that, but there must be a reason, something that they saw that you did or someone that you met that said, my gosh, we need to bring in Ayse.
I think that they saw something, an energy and maybe a courage in me. It also helped that I was class valedictorian, I'm sure. I spoke good English, but I didn't sweat it. I remember, I was like, okay, let me see if I can get this,
So it was an application.
And an interview. But I felt very in my element is what I remember. Maybe that's what impressed them.
Okay, so what university were you studying at here in New York?
Pratt Institute in Brooklyn.
Okay. And you completed your master's in 1989, is that correct?
Correct.
And then where did you begin working? Where was the first opportunity to apply this knowledge that you had been working on?
So again, this is where I was saying, it's all people, right? It's this other person, Bruce Hanna, who was the chair of the design department at the time. He asked me if I wanted to work on this project with him, designing office accessories for Knoll. That was just a beautiful way to graduate and move into my profession.
And when you say accessories, what are you referring to?
Everything from tape dispensers to paper trays to scissors, you name it. All the little accessories that you need when you have an office.
what's an example of one of your favorite creations, or probably designs is a better word, right? What is an example of one of your favorite designs from that period?
Well, so that was my first product that came out. So that was my favorite at the time. And the funny thing, Dave, is that collection is called the Orchestra Collection of Office Accessories. And they're still on the market,
Okay.
which is very rare and wonderful. And when it came out, they gave me credit on it. So it came out as designed by Bruce Hanna and Ayse Birsel. And I thought, wow, this is pretty neat. And that wasn't that difficult. I'll just keep on doing it.
I looked it up. It's some beautiful, classic, simple, elegant design. I like it. And you just said something that I always like to, it seems that every conversation I have, this comes up, but it's worth calling out. You said it was easy. And I love that because I believe that people should gravitate toward jobs, positions, those sort of things that to them feel easy, because that's usually a sign that you're gifted at it. The tendency of most people say, well, it's easy for me, it must be easy for everyone. But that's certainly not true. It's certainly not easy for me to create beautiful, elegant industrial design like you did. Have you found that to be true throughout your life, that it is all, maybe it takes work. I'm not saying it doesn't take work, but has it always felt easy to you to do this?
Yes, but there are other things that are not easy for me. So I balance it out.
Yeah.
And then I had, I think 2 years where I couldn't find another project. And I thought, maybe I should have become a lawyer, and industrial design is hard. And then these are all like little dots on my roadmap, by the way.
So let's dig into that for a little bit, because I think we're going to learn a lot from the tough periods, the failure, or the difficulties that you experience. So how did you get through that 2-year period? What were you doing during that time?
So I was freelancing during that time. Okay. And actually what was hard was, I had such a good start. The first project I've done, and it was a pleasure to work with Bruce. Such truly a joy. I learned so much, and it felt, just like you said, so natural for me to be designing these things. And then it comes out, like Knoll is one of the biggest brands you can imagine, and the product does really well. We got awards. All of that was beautiful. So I concluded that I could just keep on doing that. And that's the part that was hard, is that I couldn't attract on my own another Knoll or brands like that and make money. And so finding freelance, and, it just felt like that's not me at my best. And it was hard to make money, basically.
And what did you do to keep yourself going and keep yourself positive during a rough period like that?
Thinking about an alternative was very helpful, like to be able to say, okay, if this doesn't work, I can go back to school and become a lawyer. So that notion that you can change things and you have choices. And then the other thing is actually that 2-year period, even though when I was in it, it felt like I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing, led to 2 other people that have been instrumental in my life. So I think they were necessary. I just didn't know it. And one of them is Tucker Wiemeister, who was my boss at Smart Design, who then led to my going to Japan and designing toilet seats with Toto. And the second person was Leah Kaplan, who's one of my oldest friends and collaborators. And that led to my working with Herman Miller.
So I'm already starting to see a recurring theme, which is the power of those relationships that you were forming. Let's talk about the first for a moment. Why was he so influential in your life? What sort of things did he do to help form the success that you have achieved?
One was, Tucker V. Meister is a very well-known designer, but he's also like sunshine. Like he's joyful, and there's something infectious about his love of design, his knowledge. And so that was very influential, similar to working with Bruce. I had these great role models that showed me being a designer was a thing of joy. So I think that was very lucky. The other thing that Tucker did was his generosity. He took one of my projects, actually my thesis project, and sent it to Toto. Toto is known as the world's #1 manufacturer of bathrooms. And, a lot of people have Toto toilets and sinks in their homes today. But this was many years back, and Toto was a Japanese company, not well known in the States, and they wanted to understand world bathroom cultures. And so they were putting together a seminar and inviting some of the best designers in the world from different geographies and cultures to come to this seminar. And unbeknownst to me, Tucker sends in my thesis project, which was about a conceptual bathroom, and says, you should invite this woman. She's Turkish. She knows something about bathrooms, and you need someone from that region of the world.
Yeah, what a powerful opportunity that created.
And Leah was my boss at Kato Gobe, this other place that I was freelancing at. She was younger than me, but she was my boss, and we became fast friends. And to this day, she bosses me around. So that's Leah.
And what did she do that was helpful for you?
So Leah and I become friends. And one day she says, you need to meet my dad. And I said, well, who's your dad? And she says, Ralph Kaplan. And you need to understand, Dave, Ralph Kaplan was like a rock star in design. And he was the editor-in-chief of ID magazine, the most influential design magazine. Just his name, he was a legend. And he's also the author of one of the best books on design called By Design. So Leah says, my dad is Ralph Kaplan, and I had not made that connection. I was like, I was dumbfounded. I was like, whoa.
Oh, that's great. And she also provided opportunities for you in the industry.
So Leah has done it, but Leah introduces me to her dad, Ralph Kaplan, and then Ralph Kaplan introduced me to Herman Miller. Herman Miller became my client after I came back from Japan, and I've been working with them for more than 20 years. And that was just unbelievable, to have that opportunity. And Leah tells me now, I didn't know this at the time, that Herman Miller was looking for young designers. And so Ralph was on the lookout for who are the young designers? And I walked in the door.
That's amazing. Well, and I'm not having a background in industrial design, but I did take a moment to look these people up, and my goodness, what a pedigree. What an amazing group of mentors you had. And clearly that was influential. As someone who received so much great mentoring, is that something that you do now, is pass mentoring on to others and help others who are emerging?
Oh, that's a beautiful question. I hope so. My mentoring takes the form of helping people design their life and work. And so it's a little bit different.
Yeah, you have a wonderful newsletter that I started to receive, and your book helps with that. When did you realize that industrial design principles could be applied toward helping people solve problems with their life?
Well, I came up with this sentence one day, out of the blue, Dave, and said, my mission in life is to design the life I love. And it was said in a meeting. I don't know why I said it. I was actually trying to be funny, and that's my humor. And then that kind of stuck with me, and I started thinking about our life is our biggest project. It's our biggest design project, filled with problems and challenges and kind of constraints. And so then when I developed my design process, deconstruction, reconstruction, applying it to our life became like a proof point for both ideas, right?
For those who are unfamiliar, what is a proof point? What does that mean?
Kind of like a test to see if this works. So
Okay.
I was like, well, I have a design process and I'm claiming, at least to myself, that life is a design project. So if life is a design project, I should be able to apply this process to life. And it's a good test to see, one, is life a design project? Two, is this design process a good one? So that was my test.
I think it's fascinating that you took something that seems very different, right? Designing a toilet, designing office equipment, and that you're applying it to a more soft skill of designing your life. What is one principle from that you take from industrial design and it immediately applies to life design?
Immediately applies to life design is that both are about problem solving. Regardless of whether you're designing a toilet, an office system, an automobile, or your next vacation, or your next job, or putting together a new team, those are all changes that need to be thought differently. And they're challenges that you need to resolve or imagine new solutions to. So I guess if I were to say that very briefly, I would say both have problems.
No matter what your career is, your foundation of success begins with one thing: effective time management. And thanks to the generosity of Microsoft, you can get my entire course, Time Management Fundamentals, for free on LinkedIn Learning. Go to davegift.com to get your free access now. This is the course that millions around the world have used to become more productive and reduce stress. Everyone from Fortune 500 executives to freelancers to students. Now, it's the same coaching I've provided in person for tens of thousands of dollars per day, but you can get it for free on LinkedIn Learning. You don't need to provide anything to access it. No credit card, no email. Just go to davegift.com and start learning. Thank you so much, Microsoft and LinkedIn Learning, for your partnership. davegift.com. Okay. So let's create an imaginary situation, and maybe you can apply one of those principles. Let's say that we're talking to someone and perhaps they just lost their job or they want to transition to a new job. What is a principle of industrial design that they could apply to that situation, making a decision about what they do next?
So first of all, I would say, okay, this is a moment of transition and you're going from today to tomorrow. And the most important thing is to think about that with optimism. So instead of going, oh, no, this is a problem, I have a problem, to go, yes, this is a problem, and I'm going to come up with a great idea and it's going to be even better. So that optimism is really essential to design, whether you're designing your life or you're designing a chair. But it doesn't happen naturally. You have to work on it. So when I'm designing something, I don't go, oh, great, now I have a new idea. You have to use some tools and kind of nudge it out. And same with your life. So the tools are the basic principles of design: empathy, asking what if questions, collaborating, seeing the big picture, being playful.
I'm going to rephrase this in my way of interpreting what you're saying, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. But in designing something, you see it as an opportunity because you believe that there is a solution.
Right.
And not only that, but you believe that what you can create is going to make things better for people.
Right.
Right. And you just have to discover what that little twist is that you're going to make something better than what it was before. Am I getting that right?
Beautifully.
And I love that concept too of, you mentioned empathy, right? Because when you're designing something, you have to put yourself in the position of the person and say, how are they going to use this? What is their day like? What are their physical limitations or whatever it is? You're considering all of those things by putting yourself in a person's shoes. I can see how that would be so valuable with problem solving. And let's be honest, something that a lot of people forget to do when they're interacting with others.
Absolutely. And then, coming back to your question about, well, how does that apply to life? Is often when something is changing, we see that it makes us uncomfortable, right? And so having empathy for ourselves and recognizing that discomfort is really important, because that's what then drives the will to, I'm going to do something so I can get out of this discomfort, move out of the problem state into an idea state. And that's kind of the progression of design, is it moves you from out of the problem state into imagining ideas. And when you have ideas, that's what gives you courage, because you get excited about ideas.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if this is what you talk about in your book, but adopting that mindset actually engages the more creative part of your brain rather than us being in fight or flight or freeze. We're now moving to, let's solve this problem. Let's be creative. And that's engaging the larger part of your brain. Is that something you discuss, or am I just adding that in?
No, you're totally like channeling me. And the connection to design the long life you love was the reason that I wanted to write this book, which is my second book, is because I did a year-long research with older people who were 65 to 90 and found this unexpected growth mindset in them. Our expectation, our kind of preconception about aging is older people are shrinking and it's kind of this, they're losing things, right? Our research showed that it's quite the opposite. They're problem solving and adapting and have this incredible growth mindset. And I was like, I want to talk about this because it can teach all of us how to be wiser about our life. They're natural problem solvers.
I like that. That's encouraging as I get older and I start to feel like I'm losing things more often. I said, no, I'm a problem solver. Ayse said that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's return to your story for a second. Let's go back to the foundation of Birsel and Sek. Who is Sek?
Sek is Bibi Sek, my husband and partner.
And how did you meet with him and partner up with him?
Okay, so this is another kind of dot in my roadmap, right? I had just finished designing this amazing office system that was kind of like created a revolution in the workplace, the Resolve office system for Herman Miller. And with the confidence of that, I was like, I want to work with Renault. And Renault is the French manufacturer of these amazing automobiles. And I thought that they were doing amazing work and I wanted to work with them. And somehow I was able to connect with them and eventually got this project to design a concept interior for them. But Dave, you need to understand that industrial design doesn't make you an automobile designer. And it's two different things. So I was like, okay, great. And they were interested. This is the beauty of it. They were interested in my perspective as somebody who designs office systems. They were interested in how I would design an automobile, and I was game for that. But I needed some help. So I said, I need a mentor from your side who can tell me what I can and cannot do. And they said, okay, we'll send you Bibi Sek, and you're going to love him. And apparently they told Bibi was between two projects, and they were like, why don't you go and help Ayse for 3 months in New York with her project? And you're going to love her. So that's exactly what happened. We fell in love.
That's wonderful. So you began working together, Ayse, and then things changed, right? You had a transition that you needed to make in your life. Can you talk a little bit about the impact that the recession had there?
Yes. What happened is we fell in love. We decided to be partners in life and at work. We had kids. Bibi moved to New York and we had this really successful design firm. And then boom, recession hits. My response is, this is not going to touch us. Okay, famous last words. And then all our clients took their work in-house, which was really, made a lot of sense for them. But it meant that we found ourselves with 3 little kids and no work. And I hadn't expected this. So that's when you start designing your life. And that's really when I, in earnest, realized this idea of designing my life out of a crisis.
Well, and I think you're an example of the principle that you taught us, which is you saw that as an opportunity. You looked at it with optimism and you created something, which I think is fantastic because you're practicing what you preach.
I do. And I have to admit, Dave, when I was in the middle of it, I didn't really quite see it that way. But afterwards, I started talking about failure could be the beginning of something beautiful. And for me, finding myself with no clients in the middle of the recession felt like failure. But if it hadn't been for that, I wouldn't have developed deconstruction, reconstruction. I wouldn't have applied it to my life. I wouldn't have written a book about it. And then, everything that followed is actually coming from that incredibly difficult moment.
Well, I don't know if anyone's ever highlighted that phrase for you, but when we do a summary of this, we're going to have a call out of the phrase that you just said. Failure could be the beginning of something beautiful. Talk to me about who's another mentor who's had an impact in your success in your career.
So my mentor is Marshall Goldsmith, who's known as the world's #1 leadership coach. And actually the stories, as they always do, come together. Once I started teaching people how to design their life, I eventually wrote a book about it. And I had met Marshall because he was coaching one of the CEOs that we were working with. I met Marshall and said to him, if you ever come to New York, love to meet you. And you always say things like that and nobody follows through except Marshall. So Marshall called me up and said, I'm coming to New York. And we met and then we became fast friends. And then when my book was coming out, Marshall is a best-selling author. He's had multiple New York Times bestsellers. And he said, Ayse, why don't you do a workshop and I'll invite my friends? So he wanted to help me promote my book. And Marshall has a lot of friends. I said, we're doing this workshop. I was super excited. What I didn't expect was for him to show up with 70 of his friends, 70. And usually my workshops were like 20 people. And that was amazing. And that was the beginning of something I think neither of us expected. And that is Marshall came to my workshop, and in my workshop, he designed his life and created his legacy project, which is Marshall Goldsmith 100 Coaches. And now I'm one of the coaches, and this has become this incredible community where Marshall teaches everything he knows to people like me who are thought leaders, executive coaches, CEOs, authors, and he's the glue that holds the community together. And that's been an incredible gift.
Well, first of all, I love the humility that demonstrates of Marshall Goldsmith, because he clearly is one of the world's top thinkers in this space. And yet he recognized that he had something to learn from you with the Design Your Life. And then secondly, I have a confession to make that I probably need to get a little more involved, because I'm also in that 100 coaches list, but I just haven't gotten involved yet. So based on your recommendation and your story, I'm going to have to do that.
Okay, I'll be happy to be your bridge and connector.
You mentioned kids. How many children do you have?
So I have a stepson and we have two daughters.
Okay. I also have 3 children.
Nice.
Yeah. What role or what impact do you think they've had in the life that you've designed for yourself? In particular, I'm asking, how have they helped you be successful?
Oh, that's beautiful. I mean, one, having kids gives you incredible creative energy. So you're now driven to do the things that you want to do and to provide for them, but also to provide for them as a role model. So I always thought, like, I hope my children see how much I enjoy what I'm doing, that work is fun for me, joyful for me. And even if we don't do the same thing eventually, that they're free to choose what they want. In fact, I told my kids, I don't want any more designers. And one of them listened and the other didn't. So, uh, but they grew up seeing us at work, you know? And so that's an incredible motivator. And now what I'm enjoying now is for them to tell me, they're now 18 and 19, and my stepson is 30. You know, I feel like we're now balancing each other out. My role as like, I know more than you do, so I'm going to tell you what to do is changing to what would you do? How would you think about this? So I love that transition of having conversations and having their perspective on things.
Yeah. It sounds like you're a wonderful mom for having those kinds of open and candid conversations with them. And I'm starting to reach that point. My oldest is 17. So I'm starting to have those conversations with my son. And it's a nice, I like that word you use, transition, right?
Yes.
I think you've heard that word several times, haven't you? Is that part of your philosophy with your book?
I think maybe I use it because those transition moments are when you design things because you feel like, okay, there's something changing. Like for me right now, the change is our kids are older and I'm becoming an empty nester. And so that creates this sense of like, what's next naturally. So those transition moments are actually beautiful moments for redesigning your life, rethinking things, for self-reflection. Yeah. So I'm not surprised that I use the word transition. Also because I'm in one, you know?
Well, the last question I was going to ask you is, what do you see going forward? What is your career going to transition to in the next several years?
That's such a good question. So I'll send you the roadmap, but the roadmap was very helpful where we started, right? I was telling you about how I created this roadmap and then like 1/3 of the page was empty. And I was like, okay, so what's the growth out of here? And I realized that I create with Design the Life You Love. There are many subsets, like design the leadership you love, design the team you love, design the work-life balance you love, design the parenting you love, design the relationship you love, many subsets. I used to think that there are too many different variations. Like, how do I make sense out of all this? And then I had this aha moment where I realized actually all of them are valid and I can do all of them. And the way to do all of them is through collaborations. And so I'm now developing like design the parenting you love with one set of friends and collaborators, design the leadership with another set of friends and collaborators. Design the long life was the result of a collaboration with the SCAN Foundation in our research. So I'm talking to another friend about design the work-life harmony. And I see, so my transition is towards finding ways to abundance through collaborations. And I love that idea because one, you're not alone. You're doing it with other experts and peers. And that's how you work with your friends and become friends with people you work with, which is one of my mottos. And so I feel like once I realized that, I was like, oh, this is a great place to be. It was something that I was kind of worrying about. Which one of these is my next thing? And I realized, hold on, all of them are my next thing. And this is how.
Well, I love how they're all variations of a theme. You've created this concept of design the life you love, and you're now reapplying it in lots of other areas. And so I'm fascinated to see how you create that. And I would encourage everyone who's listening to this to get Ayse's book and sign up for her newsletter. She sends a lovely newsletter, once a week, something like that?
Once a week on Mondays, yes.
Yeah.
And then I do a virtual tea on Wednesdays.
Oh, fantastic. What great resources. All right. So thank you so much for what you've shared. Now, what I do at this point is I like to give someone who's been listening to this and they've loved your story, they've heard it, but let's do something about it, right? Let's do something today or this week so that you make Ayse and her story a part of your life. So what I'm going to do, Ayse, is I'm going to share 3 actions that I think someone could take based on what they heard. And then I'd love for you to share one of your own at the end.
Great.
So the first thing is that idea of sketching out your life. And Ayse is going to generously share that with us. But I would say, even if you don't do it exactly her way, just that act of sitting down and writing down the different points of your life and what you've learned so far, and then maybe sketching out where you want to go. I think that would be a great activity to sit down for an hour or two and just explore that yourself. And I think that will be really insightful and give you ideas of things that you want to do to find success. The other thing that stood out to me, Ayse, in your story is the power of people and relationships and these different connections that you made and these conversations that you had throughout your career, and especially the mentors that you had. This is a thread that is common to people who are successful. And so if you're listening to this, I would encourage you to seek out a mentor, find someone and see if they'll meet with you or share their wisdom with you. Or if you're maybe at a more advanced stage in your career, maybe mentor someone else and give them some help. I think that would be so powerful in your life. And then the last one, I love that idea of when designing something or solving a problem in your life, that optimism is part of design. It's the idea that there is a solution, and not only that, but maybe the solution that you create is going to make things even better than they were before because you had to solve this problem. So I would encourage you to think about something that you're working on, something that you're having a hard time solving, and look at it with optimism and say, this is an opportunity, or how is this an opportunity to make things better? Those are such great principles, Ayse. Is there something that you would encourage someone listening to do?
Dave, first of all, you did such a beautiful job of bringing those together. Listening to you, I felt inspired and thought, okay, those are really clear tips and tools. And for the last one, in terms of seeing something optimistically, I find using the what if phrase super useful. So what if this was an opportunity? What if this allowed me to learn something? Or what if this thing that I'm fearing is like the beginning of the best thing? And often those things are true. It's just hard to see it in the middle of a crisis or a change, right? So I find that question, what if, really helps with that. What if?
Oh, it's such a great question. Anyone can apply that immediately. Thank you so much, Ayse, for your generosity and sharing your wisdom with us. What's the best place for people to go to continue to learn from you?
So the best place would be, actually, you mentioned my newsletter. That would be lovely. If people wanted to subscribe, they could go to aysebirsel.com/newsletter. And that's just like my name, AYSE, B like boy, IRSEL.com/newsletter, and subscribe, and then you'll get my newsletter and you'll know what I'm up to.
Thank you so much, Ayse, and thank you everyone for listening to this. Remember, do something about what you heard. She shared such wonderful wisdom with us, and you can make it a part of your life by scheduling the time and doing something about it. It'll stick with you forever. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Dave.
You've been listening to the Dave Crenshaw Success Project, hosted by my dad, Dave Crenshaw, and produced by Invaluable Incorporated. Sound editing was done by my brother Stratton Crenshaw. Research and assistant production by Victoria Bidez. Voiceover by me, Darcy Crenshaw. And the music is by Ryan Brady via Pond 5 licensing. Please subscribe to the Dave Crenshaw Success Project on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you like to get your podcasts. And please don't forget to leave us a 5-star review. See you next time.